I held off on buying a Hat in Time for quite a while, despite hearing of nothing but positive views surrounding the game. As I watched small bits of gameplay on YouTube, I perceived the game as a very charming one. And it is, yet for some odd reason the artistic approach the game took felt off-putting to me. But eventually I caved and bought it anyways, having not even the faintest idea at the time that this $20 indie title would become one of my favorite 3D platformers of all time. Now, naturally, for a 3D platformer to be enjoyable, at least in my eyes, it requires two specific aspects to be fun and unique: the controls and the world explored. A Hat in Time's control scheme is as simplistic as running, jumping, and diving as if you were playing Super Mario 64, yet adds an element of distinction with the inclusion of numerous hats complete with their own styles and abilities. Being able to freely speed through levels on a moped, materialize ground beneath my feet, or slow time in order to catch up to a speeding rocket, all thanks to the multitude of hats available, makes for a fluent, easy to pick up, and fun to master control scheme that never grew stale. The second key aspect in 3D platformers, as I mentioned before, is the world. While being able to fluently control a game's character matters quite a lot, so too does the world or worlds in which that character is exploring. Some of the most critically acclaimed 3D platformers of all time have worlds that feel just right. They don't feel cluttered with random objects, they feel great. Every corner of these worlds holds something new to discover. Bringing Super Mario 64 back into the picture, its loads of intricate levels are what makes the game so memorable. There's so much variety between and within each and every one of them. A Hat in Time has this amazing level design where no part of any given world feels too cramped or empty, and new discoveries await the player everywhere they go. However, the game is lacking in one minor thing: numbers. 5 chapters or worlds exist within the main game, with 2 additional chapters existing within the game's downloadable content, for a total of 7 unique worlds. Some may consider this a decent amount, while others may say it's on the lower end of the spectrum, as I do. While I was expecting more worlds, however, I was far from disappointed with the worlds I was given, because while they may lack numbers, these areas are all massive, and most of them could quite easily pass as numerous smaller worlds on their own, with how much variety is jammed into each one. From the intricate, danger-ridden depths of the Nakusa Metro to the many sprawling islands of Alpine Skyline, the player will encounter all sorts of wacky characters, fun platforming challenges, and an uncountable amount of collectibles. Each of these expansive areas within the game felt like their own adventure. In one world, I was aiding a girl who would soon become my enemy to take down the vicious ruler of Mafia Town, and in the next, I was starring in multiple films led by 2 dueling producers. Without a doubt in my mind, these were some of the best worlds I've ever had the pleasure of exploring, and because of that, I'd like to rank every chapter in A Hat in Time from least to most enjoyable, in my opinion. Let's get started. At number 7 is naturally Time's End. I personally wouldn't even consider this place its own chapter, yet the game does, so it's only fitting it be included. Time's End takes the form of a massive castle flooded with boiling lava, rotating fire bars, book-lobbing birds, and dozens of other treacherous traps. Followed by this long, intimidating hall of the hardest challenges the game has to offer, rests Mustache Girl, atop her glimmering throne of timepieces, awaiting a fight. While the final boss does take place within this chapter, other than that, it doesn't have very much going for it. I don't mean to say that it's bare, in fact, with its entertaining difficulty level and amazing music, Time's End is far from it. But when compared to the other chapters, it sadly rests at the bottom of the ranking in my eyes. Number 6 is Alpine Skyline, the 4th chapter unlocked within the base game. Despite its low ranking here, this was actually the level that I witnessed my friend playing when he ultimately convinced me to purchase the game. Watching him effortlessly scale a towering island with his differing abilities only to zoom to another one far off in the distance looked like so much fun, and when I finally encountered this area on my own playthrough, it truly was. Freely roaming the dozens of separate yet connected structures of rock jutting from the sky, while finding a new collectible every step of the way, was an amazing experience. What drags this chapter down for me is one issue: the individual missions. Every chapter has multiple missions, sometimes selectable from the world map, other times discoverable within the chapters themselves, as is the case with Alpine Skyline. Beginning in the central island, the player is given an option as to which order the 4 main missions are completed in, dependent on which mission they actually discover first. This was present in previous chapters, and I do enjoy the implementation of non-linearity within them, but here it's not as exciting, simply because all of the missions are rather similar. In one, you scale an intricate windmill, in another a series of birdhouses, in the next a multi-layered lava cake, and lastly a mysterious bell tower. While they do sound different, and they do have unique designs, they all boil down to simple platforming, and perhaps a very minor case of puzzle solving. Yes, the platforming is fun, and by no means did I dislike any of these missions, but compared to the wacky ideas present within other chapters, this one feels rather uninspired. Again, being able to run around and explore these islands was truly a blast, and the chapter's final mission was extremely intense, so while the chapter was far from bad, the other ones are simply better in my eyes. The first chapter of the game sits at number 5, Mafia Town. This rogue-filled island, being the first area the player explores, is the smallest in the game, and yet it's still packed with activities. Despite its compact nature, this one town holds a bustling marketplace, construction site, beachside port, multiple water slides, a restaurant, and a massive theater which itself contains a bar, casino, and naturally a stage set for shows, or in this case, battles. Not only does this place have many different attractions while not feeling too overwhelming, but it's also far from short on level ideas. The first 3 levels serve to help the player adjust to the game's mechanics by tasking them with fighting mafia members, learning the lay of the land, and performing tricky jumps using advanced platforming techniques. After the warm-up acts comes the infiltration of the Mafia Theater, where the first boss is fought and dethroned, and yet, even after the Mafia King's demise, missions continue to open up, including a game of hide-and-seek with tickets required to open up a vault, a race against a rocket-riding Mafia man, and a complete change of pace as Mafia Town is put under siege by lava, and Hat Kid is forced to turn off all the magma-spewing faucets. I love this chapter a lot, as it not only serves as a fun, effective, and charming introduction to the game, but also contains later missions that bring a much more difficult challenge to the player, while providing a unique new perspective on the level you've grown to know by changing up the terrain in lethal ways. Number 4's chapter is Battle of the Birds, and this one is very distinctive. The entirety of the chapter takes place in Deadbird's studio and its 2 movie sets, a western-style train and a booming metropolis. The 2 sets and the actors present within them are led by producers DJ Grooves and the conductor, who are at war over Award 42, an annual trophy given to the best producer. Before being permitted entry to either of their sets, however, the player must first infiltrate the studio itself in the first mission. Surprisingly enough, this was quite easily one of my favorite stealth missions of all time. While it wasn't very difficult, sneaking past guards while witnessing the 2 producers' ideas and personalities along the way was extremely fun. After obtaining the chapter's first timepiece, pressure begins to rise. The next 4 missions are divided equally between the 2 producers' sets. 2 take place on the train and 2 in the city. The 2 on the train involve Hat Kid starring in 2 films. One, a murder mystery, because when has a murder mystery not taken place on a train? And the other, an action-packed platforming sequence to stop the train's fast-approaching self-destruction. The 2 films produced by DJ Grooves are far less dramatic and way more flashy. In fact, they both revolve around gaining popularity through the usage of sponsorships and parades. While I can easily say that I enjoyed the conductor's stages more, as they were far more expansive and exciting, being able to discover their differing personalities and film preferences was a very interesting and well-implemented idea, made even better by the fact that whichever producer's levels the player performs better in is the one who takes the role as the chapter's boss. At number 3 is, coincidentally, Chapter 3, Subcon Forest. This area is massive, not only on a horizontal scale, but a vertical one as well. At ground level, the forest trails lead through haunted swamps, a snowy manor, and infested graveyards, and in the skies above, the branches of trees act as platforms for the player to hop across and utilize to survey the ground below. Below the ground in the Subcon well lies even more to explore. This chapter also has one of my favorite characters, Snatcher, and the indisputable best boss of the game, the Toilet of Doom. But my favorite part about it is the many ways to maneuver about. You can speed through the forest trails, risk diving through the swamps, or swing through the trees, and no matter which path you choose, there will be something waiting for you at the end of it. While Alpine Skyline certainly was an open world, most of the different islands felt and looked too similar for my liking, but here, everything is mashed together perfectly. There's no streamer to ride that transports you from one rocky island to another with the same exact style. This place is interconnected and extremely fun to simply roam around in. The final 2 chapters that remain are both from the game's DLC packs, and before we confront my personal favorite, number 2 is Yakuza Metro. This chapter contains what is by far the biggest area in the game. This massive underground metro hides 9 whole timepieces, nearly 1/5 of the game's entire collection. With such sheer girth, this level hides all kinds of secrets. In fact, it took me hours to even locate half the timepieces, let alone collect them. The many different subway lines act as a disorienting maze, and yet, running in one direction only to come across an area I'd already combed clean didn't prove to be frustrating, thanks to the smooth music, fun and oftentimes stressful challenges along the way, and the many back alley cats roaming the place, all with funny lines such as, "My uncle got robbed here, good ice cream." Exploring the vast stations of this brightly lit metro is beyond enjoyable, and luckily enough, all of the backtracking I did to find my way around the place managed to pay off in the chapter's finale, Rush Hour, where Hat Kid must rush through the entire metro whilst being chased down by relentless cats. Between the immense and quite honestly impressive size of this chapter and its amazing finale, I haven't regretted buying this DLC for a second. And yet the game's other DLC pack, Seal the Deal, hosts my favorite chapter in the game, but it certainly was a close call. Sitting proudly atop its throne at number 1 is the only chapter left, the Arctic Cruise. Funnily enough, this chapter has the least amount of timepieces of any other in the game, containing only 5, 3 without time rifts, and although it may not have many, the ones it does have are more than memorable enough to make up for it. As its name suggests, the Arctic Cruise takes place on a walrus-manned ship sailing the Arctic seas. Though appearing small when compared to Yakuza Metro, this ship is certainly of a decent size, and it may take a while to map its many rooms out in your head. This is exactly what the chapter's first mission allows you to do. Act 1, Bon Voyage's goal for the player is to collect the shards of a shattered timepiece, which are littered all about the boat. Finding them all requires scouring the entire ship, and so as the player locates more and more of them, they'll begin to piece together how the boat's laid out, which is a necessity in the next 2 acts, Ship Shape and Rock the Boat. Ship Shape requires the player to deliver dishes to the kitchen, boxes to the boat's pilot, and perform a set number of other fetch quests whilst under a timer. Being able to maneuver around the boat and understand where Hat Kid is in relation to where she needs to end up is key in completing this fast-paced level. Lastly, the chapter's finale, Rock the Boat, involves Hat Kid simultaneously crashing the boat Titanic style and then proceeding to save all of the lives she just put in jeopardy. As the ship capsizes, freezing water invades every inch of it, and navigating the terrain becomes far more difficult, as not only are obstacles everywhere, but carrying the survivors to safety will cause Hat Kid's footing to decline. The more survivors the player chooses to carry at once, the riskier continuing becomes, as Hat Kid begins to slip and slide more and more. Upon the moment when the last survivor is brought to their lifeboat, the captain is revealed to be stoically resting with his sinking ship, unwilling to leave it behind. The player must enact one final rescue despite the captain's wishes to go down with his vessel, and then, as the boat is overtaken by the frigid waves, the final timepiece is obtained. I was actually rather shocked by this chapter's depressing ending, but the fact still stood that all 3 of these missions reigned supreme in every aspect. The boat was designed in such a way that I truly felt like I was on a vacation getaway, and the desperation of the crew as it slowly went under was conveyed to me, the player, in a strong way. I felt the emotions as the ship went down just as I felt the carefree joy of exploring it and meeting its wacky crew in the 2 missions prior. This one chapter was a joy to play through from start to finish, and that's why it is my favorite in the game. I might have strayed a little from my original focus of world design as I talked about characters and events within the worlds, but to be fair, they work in harmony. Yakuza Metro wouldn't be as lively without its cafes and cats who post reviews of said cafes, and the Arctic cruise ship wouldn't feel as alive without its crew, and its sinking wouldn't have been so impactful without first getting to know said crew. So while my initial intentions were to talk solely about how the worlds are designed in a way that doesn't overwhelm the player while still having a lot going on, I feel these added elements serve to stress that fact even further. The worlds in A Hat in Time are, as I said, designed to feel fluent and fun to traverse, and the memorable characters, dramatic occurrences, and fitting background tracks all work together to create some of the most lively and fun to explore areas I've encountered in a video game. Thank you all for watching.